those of us who haven't had a chance to read it yet, what's something you can take away that's a good story?
Yeah, so the book has tons of stories because I really wanted to, one of the things that's common to women in general, so whether you're a Muslim woman or whether you're any woman, women have one thing in common, that we get written on the history books very easily. Even the women contribute significantly to history, we get written out of the history books. And so it's not surprising to me that Muslim women who were so influential and such civilizational heroes, they got written out of the history books, meaning they're in there, but they've never been brought to light. So through this book, I'm presenting these women because they were the movers and the shakers of their time. They did what we think is a modern thing to do. We think we're breaking barriers, we're doing this, we're doing that. And you have all these women that were either in 7th century were completely engaged politically, civically, economically, and spiritually. They were around the Prophet. But even before that, when I was researching this book, I found a specific pattern in the Quran. And because the Quran also talks about the predecessors of faiths. Quran is not just the story that begins with Prophet Muhammad. It begins with literally Adam and Eve and the Genesis. All the biblical stories are in there. Is that there's always a man and a woman that's been paired together. The Quran has this always showing men and women side by side as co-stewards of one another. Whether you have Mary and Jesus, or whether you have Moses and Asya, or Moses and Sarah, whether you have Prophet Muhammad and Khadija or Aisha, whether you have, all the women are paired up with an important man. What does that mean? That men could not have done many of the things that they were able to do without the support of the woman. This is not a new story. This was the story way back in the 7th century. And what I found interesting as I was writing this book, I felt very comfortable in 7th century. We always talk about, we don't want to go to 7th century. I'm completely comfortable in the 7th century. I feel like the people around, the way they're talking, the way they're interacting with one another. Well, like for instance, Prophet Muhammad in 7th century Arabia, he wanted to educate people because he himself was illiterate and the revelations were coming down and he was afraid that people wouldn't understand what these revelations meant. And he was by nature an educator. So he just created a circle in the room of a person's home. And these circles are still called halakas. We call them halakas today, and we still have halakas. And in a circle, he had all his followers. So there was an enslaved black person, whether it's a man or a woman. There was the noble person who was very rich, like Umar and all these other people. And then there were all the women. So it was just a circle of people that were engaging with one another. It's like this room right now. And this was 7th century. And this kind of learning took root and it became the basis for Islamic education. So yeah, I felt very comfortable there. I felt comfortable because women were always coming and debating the Prophet, like right to his face, questioning him and asking questions. Well, why this and why that? There was no concept of, oh, you're a woman, your voice is supposed to be lowered. Keep your voice down, don't speak. And so you have many stories like that. So yeah, I would go back to 7th century Arabia any day because it was a very progressive, forward-looking, highly energizing time. And also the mosque scene was very much like a community center.